Hi, Rayne here. I'm to talk a little bit today about some random shiz involving Nibiru. I know that maybe some of you have heard some of the claims from NASA talking about the ninth planet, or not the ninth planet, the 10th planet being Xena, that was discovered in 2005. Now, this existence predicated by NASA's announcement of a planet finding in 2005 that they called Xena might as well be circumstantial. I mean, some of the evidence that I can see does point to something existing out there at an orbit that we cannot observe. Well, that's what NASA is telling us. The truth is that whatever this is, it's coming into our solar system, has been here before and has done it at 3,600-year intervals. Now, the interval in which this planet arrives back into our solar system is approaching, and the shortest and longest could, put it extended out another year or two. So 2020 could be when it's directly affected in our most proximal orbit. The problem with this theory is that upon its previous approach, wormwood actually struck the planet, and 3,600, maybe double that time period later, we have Earth, the Moon, Mars. Before all of that, before all of written history, before everything we've ever known, there's good possibility that wormwood could have been a direct impactor to the Earth when this place was known as Tiamat, and destroyed the planet and made it a lot smaller than it used to be, leaving the asteroid belt and its remnants part of the Earth, and the Moon part of the Earth also could be explained this way. And the reason that human settlements could be discovered or witnessed or seen on the surface of Mars could be from a rather reformation of two planetary body pieces that were broken off from the original whole part of Tiamat. And since the Moon is mostly iron and nickel, maybe more metals could be found near the surface. I would be willing to bet that the Moon is mantle, mostly comprised of mantle. And I wouldn't say that it would be a difficult stretch to imagine that this result of the inner planets, Earth, the Moon, Mars, maybe even Venus, could be explained from a destruction of Tiamat. But the truth is, we don't really know, because there's not much evidence to point to that being a fact from the past, other than some historical accounts from some older religious texts that were many, many times more ancient than the Bible. Going back as far as Mesopotamia, Sumeria, even in the earliest Indian Veda texts, they talk about these types of wars happening above us in the skies between people with flying craft, vimanas. And this is also around the time of the rumored existence of Atlantis. That was rumored, is now proven a fact. The issue that I have with all of this, is that they're hiding the truth in plain sight. They don't want you to know that the end of the world has already happened. We're living in a post-apocalyptic world where wormwood has already made its appearance and already obliterated the original Eden. We are now living in the second Eden, or the new Earth, post-destruction. And this gradual takeover of evil and whatever else that may happen in the world is natural. It's a natural cycle. And if you look closely to everything that's happening in the world, we are doing it to ourselves. There's no outside entity or force interacting with us that's related to us in one way or another that is actually impactfully creating these situations for us to go through. We are doing it to ourselves. That's what's happening to everyone. Now, the problem with the situation is most people don't know that. They're not aware of the age, or the true age of the Bible. The age of the Bible is much older than most of the texts you can put into perspective. Some of them say they have proof of it being only 6,000 years old, proof of it being 500, proof of it being 800 or 900 years. Well, the point is, you can't accurately depict the proof of any age of any object with radiocarbon dating, rather. But you can't predict the age of it with that method. It's been proven to be a false or inaccurate method or means of dating or even putting something into historical perspective to tell its proper age by its radiocarbon emissions or its radioactive decay is something that is fairly useful to certain degrees. Beyond certain realms of experimentation, I think it would be useful. But in the dating of stones, it's not very useful. In the dating of old objects or historical objects, it's not very useful. And this problem just keeps persisting as you go further, trying to test something to find accurate agedness using this method of aging. And we know that it's flawed and it's not true in its potential to being accurate in any stretch of the imagination. And yet they expect us to take their explanation of the age of something or a document based off radiocarbon dating using those methods that have been proven to be false or fallible. So the truth is staring you in your face. It is. We have already been through this. We've already been through a decline and a destruction and a rebuilding. We've already been through it. Humanity has simply forgotten it. And the reason I say that we've forgotten these things is because when you apply electronics or electricity, not electronics, but electricity to a magnetized engine or a magnetized potential, you then have electromagnetic power, which can be influential in the memory containing of any sort of mechanical or computerized implementation. That means that even your brain can be erased with electromagnetic waves. Your memories, everything, your DNA, your very DNA can forget its history, its past, and move on to an amorphous new being, whatever. Yet radiation can cause a lot of different things to happen in DNA. And I don't want to even begin to go down that road, but I'm saying when you talk about things as if it's a large planet that has a tremendous magnetic field that has potential to interact with ours enough to cause a worldwide or widespread natural disaster occurring around the world simultaneously, then you have to contend with some answers as to what impact this has on the psychological part of the human or our brain, our memories. It wipes them out because it's basically a hard drive sweep. Basically, using electromagnetic pulse, it's a hard drive sweep that kills electronics. And if you've done it at right frequency, it can wipe the human brain. And there's not a damn bit of the science that proves me wrong. All of it proves me right. The evidence that I've been looking at, the science I've been studying, and the things that I've been watching have been pointing to this being the case, especially when you cannibalize food. Now, the problems with humanity that's going on right now is because we're eating food grown from our own soil. And I don't mean soil as in dirt, I mean soil as in human waste. And yes, we are eating food grown by the fertilization using our own human waste. And if you don't believe me, then watch Biosludge documentary and you'll get it put in your face. And you'll also understand that it is literally hitting the fan as we talk about it. So the entirety of our society has been based on lies so far. Modern society, I should say. Current political regimes do not want you to know what's really happening. They don't want you to know that the world has already ended and that we're living in a post-apocalyptic New Eden world type scenario, that there's nothing we can do to destroy this place. Nothing. And the earth itself is healing itself by itself. No need in our interference at all. All we have to do is live in tandem with nature, plant trees so we can curb the CO2 problem. And clean water and proper waste disposal can make things a lot better for all humans, especially if you want to have kids. Now, we all know about this new law or proposition that's been posted talking about everything that causes cancer. Acrylamide is present in everything. It's because they put the shit in there. And they're telling me that it's a natural occurrence when you brown food. That may be the case when you cook it on a certain surface. And it's also maybe the case if you cook it with certain things inside the DNA of the food itself, being replicated food or synthetic meat. Now, I'm not saying that everything in the world is fake, but if everything is putting off this material, if everything is giving off this acrylamide and off-gassing cancerous vapors, then it's pretty damn certain to me that everything in this world is fake or is being mass produced in a false way. That if you were to actually you go out in the backyard, find a cow somewhere, if you live in the country, pop a cap in that cow, slaughter that bastard, and then put the meat inside your house and compare that to the meat you buy from the grocery store. If you've done your proper raising of your cattle properly and correctly, you will really be able to tell the difference between the meat you're getting at the store versus what you get directly from the cow. Now, the meat itself is different. So that speaks to me that maybe the meat in the grocery store is fake. Well, we already seen documentaries about them using meat glue or some kind of menagerie of fats and soluble acids that glue things together using biological polymer. Okay, I don't think so. That's just nasty. Steak reproduction being remade from fallen pieces of meat that was rejected from another shipper. No, thank you. And this issue just brings it further into the truth that even if you were a starving individual, even if you had no money, no food, no job, they would be feeding this crap to you anyway. It's pretty darn true. And that you would still be getting this treatment from natural people. And it's very true, because if you've been taught one way your whole life to live, you don't know that it's wrong. And if someone tells you that it's incorrect, you won't believe them, no matter how much proof they present your case. I understand that this is a situation it's hard to wrap your mind around. I understand that it's very hard to look at this and think that, well, this might be true. It's very hard to understand it if you don't understand the science and know the history. But from what I can tell, okay, the earth has already been through this calamity once before. And God himself even spoke in the Bible. Now, you can look this up if you want, because I know this is in there. Said that he would never do this again. He would never cause a planet-wide catastrophe again. Never. He didn't want to do that to us, and he wouldn't want to destroy what he had so much fun creating, especially not when he loves us all and only wants to have this experience together. The issue with the new Eden being controlled by evil is because we're allowing it. We're allowing it to control it experientially. If we disavow it and we don't allow it to continue to enslave us, to continue to contractualize us into smaller and smaller groups and to divide us into more and more different divisions of people, then all we're going to do is seal our own fate again, and it will happen again. On some small way, it'll be a catastrophe. They will kill everyone with this Project Bluebeam crap they got going on, and whatever else they decide to throw in the mix of the pot, or whatever you want to call it, the stew of deceit is what I call it. But the ramifications of this means that even if you are a religious person or a spiritual person, this does not negate your views. All this does is change your timeline. This means that we're living in the post-apocalyptic world, thus no longer in danger of going through an Armageddon because it has already happened. We are living in a cyclical natural world that does repeat itself occasionally. We're approaching the time in which it originally occurred. All this time ago, sure, another cyclical moment where it comes back around to the long count Baktun. Very, very similar to Mayan calendar. And, Baktun is Mayan calendar, the long count year. So when you get to the insane level of information that I've been able to amass about this subject, when you are versed in the Mayan calendar and versed in the Mayan studies and versed in their sociology, at least what we can gather from the evidence they've left behind, their society they left in the middle of nowhere in the daggum rainforest. They disappeared, okay? They left the earth. There's plenty of proof of that. Plenty of proof for that to have occurred. If there's no evidence, like they didn't leave a postcard or a return address, big deal, okay? We know they're not here and they didn't just disappear. And they didn't die, because that's one of the things that was brought up a lot during this crazy little event, okay? if the Mayans were wiped out, were killed by some sort of plague or pandemic or virus, if it was a natural occurrence, then we would find bones. We would find the bodies somewhere, if not anywhere, close to where they were. We would find the bodies. Now, given the math and doing the science yourself and understanding how far a massive, like 200, 300-foot tidal wave could carry the human body, and a mass of them around the world, you could say, well, it might wind up somewhere in this area, and you can start looking in that area for remnants of bones. Now, I've done that, and where it shows up in some cases, there are some relatively small areas where it could occur, especially that far back in history, to maybe find some remnants of bones of people that may have lived in that area that we probably thought were natural to that area or indigenous, but were actually not. These were actually the Mayans. Now, there were findings of bones in certain areas, like I'd say the northern part of the mountains in North America, and some of them in Nova Scotia, and some in around the Pompeii area. Now, those bones that were found in those areas were not counted as indigenous peoples. They were counted as travelers or foreigners from the indigenous, because you go further down the island, further down the mountain, and you can find indigenous people bones buried, not left out strewn on the ground or left into the rock strata, but you'd find them buried in the ground in Pompeii. The biggest problem with Pompeii thought is that most people think that, hey, everyone there died standing up because the volcano erupted. That's one occurrence, yes, but if you look at their method of their dealing with their dead, before that, they buried their dead in a stone box, okay? Not in a wooden box, but a stone box, or what you would call a sarcophagus. And in the past, we have had people looking around mountains trying to find body and remains of bodies in any sort of fashion or whatever, through natural occurrences, a melt off of mountain ice or glacial ice, whatever could occur that could move it further down on the plateau or down range or whatever. They still didn't find anything. So barring some sort of nationwide archaeological find to look for Mayan bones, I would say you're not going to find any, because I didn't see any evidence of that. But I wasn't looking on the ground either. I didn't get out there myself and dig around in the dirt, but I did look through some of the more excavational areas where it could have occurred, and where my math put it arriving at could have been locations around certain areas in mountains and highlands, especially if it's a 200-foot tidal wave. It's only going to carry things a certain distance and carry things at a certain pace and in a certain direction. So when you know those variables and you understand it's possible it could have wound up in any of the highest mountain ranges nearby, because the 200-foot tidal wave is not going to get stopped by a beach or by land. It's going to be stopped by mountains, especially a 200-foot tidal wave, not something small or short like a 60-foot tidal wave or tsunamis like we normally experience them. Still bad, okay? But 200 feet is insane. That is insane. And that is exactly what occurred when whatever it was struck the earth all that time ago. It created a 200-foot tidal wave that ripped around the planet in less than a minute. Yeah, in less than a minute. And that was post-Mayan existence, okay? That was after they were gone, because there's no evidence of them ever being there from that point forward, at least not in the Younger Dryas area. So we're talking in the Younger Dryas time period is when this may have occurred. Now, that does put the times off, and it does put biblical prophecy off, because biblical prophecy is just a bunch of crap at the moment, because it's all occurred. It's all happened. This is a history book. It's not prophecy. We've already experienced it. The history book we've discovered was in scrolls, inside jars, inside caves, in the mountains. Now, why would they do that? Obviously, if there's a worldwide flood or calamitous event that wipes out all of humanity, except for maybe a select few that can get into a damn boat and float around. This has happened more than once. Floods have happened more than once, and more than plenty of times for you to understand this is a mythology that's happened in just about every known branch of humanity in the past. And then when you see that this occurs in every single historical account, then you look at things like, well, there's a good possibility this actually happened, and that even the Mayans didn't mention this. The Mayans are the only historical religion, or well, not religion, but historical people and historical culture that do not mention a flood, because they were here before the flood and were not post-flood. So either they were wiped out by it and there's no evidence that we can speak of to see where they may have went, or they left the planet. Pretty damn sure they left, because that's what their religion talks about. Their spirituality talks about a dragon from the sky. Their leader came out from the mouth of the dragon and spoke to them, gave them words, gave them science, gave them history, gave them math, gave them culture, and then left and said one day he would be back before the end of the world. He came back and took them, and there you go. Atlantis wasn't just a little place, okay? This was a huge continent that existed long before we did, and may have been originally on Tiamat as one of the mainland islands or mainland masses on the original Earth. Tiamat, much larger than Earth itself. Maybe even can throw back some explanations or superlatives to the point of a rather large landmass that was once one landmass, not multiple continents. The reason we have multiple continents is because our planet is unstable. And what gives it its stability, or the stability right now, is the moon. What gives it its stability and has been giving it its stability is the moon. So once the moon goes away, or if anything like that were to happen, if any other body were to come in this neighborhood and start tossling things around, you can tousle your hair, tease yourself all you want. But the truth is, if anything else large enough to split a planet in half or impact a planet and destroy it completely into 3 separate bodies is large enough to do some serious damage, even on a half sprint. So this object, whatever's coming through, has been on course before and has been driven off course by maybe an impact from previous orbit, and has even been gone longer than usual, or is farther out from orbit than usual. So what we're going to see is probably a slingshot to a different portion of the orbit, and it's going to come back through its original trajectory. Maybe not towards us, but around the sun, close enough to interact with our planet to really cause some bad shit to happen. And when I say bad shit, I really mean bad shit. I'm talking like earthquakes. I'm talking planetary tectonic shifting. I'm talking volcanic eruptions, probably the entire ring of fire at one time. Talking also a good possibility of crustal displacement happening, where you won't feel an earthquake. The wind will just be 3,000 or 4,000 miles an hour. And that will obliterate everything on the surface if you're not in the mountains. But if you're on the lee side or a side of the mountain that isn't being blown directly by the wind, you might survive it. But otherwise, yeah, we're pretty fucked. At least if you're above ground. And the elites know this. So why wouldn't they be telling everybody? Because they don't have enough room in their underground fortresses for everyone. And they don't have enough food for everyone. And they think that, hey, this is a perfect moment to start culling the population like we've wanted to, according to the George Guidestones. We need to keep it down to about 500 million. And they're going to do this. And they're going to wipe out half the planet, maybe even a third of it, 2/3, whatever, more than they need to. And they're going to obliterate everyone because they feel that we are in the way. When the truth is, if they just utilize Tesla's technology, ether field connectivity, where we can use passive electronics rather than use active electronics that poison us, then we can all get along just fine. We don't have enough food, plenty of land, plenty of energy, because we won't have to use natural resources to get energy anymore. It comes from the ether, from the earth itself, which is never ending and a bottomless pit of energy. So if you know how to utilize that technology and actually tap into that realm of the ether, then why the hell aren't you doing it? That's my question. Do I hear anyone agreeing with me out there about this? Because I know that if we did this at least one time in our history, we can do it again. And we've done this about 100 times before. I mean, look at Atlantis. The history, the legacy of Atlantis alone tells you we've had this technology before. Vimanas, flying craft, electromagnetic gravitic craft, whatever. It's just electromagnetism, okay? That's all it is. No need for gravity. Don't confuse yourself with something that doesn't exist. It's electromagnetism, okay? We are compelled to the ground because of our metal content in our body. Okay? That's going to be all for now. So thanks. And please like and subscribe.